United Kingdom.
Can I thank the President today and also the Secretary-General for the briefing at the beginning of this crucial session. Yesterday, alongside other ministers here in New York this week, I hosted a session to hear from doctors who have recently returned from Gaza. And the stories they told would stay with me forever. One told of the screams of toddlers and the scream of a toddler who she had operated on without full anesthetics, and how she hoped and prayed that he would not feel pain. Another told of the seriously malnourished pregnant women affecting their babies, and they talked about doctors and nurses whose family members were killed but who still came back to work in hospitals in unimaginable conditions to help others. And they told of how the absolute basics of modern medicine, like antibiotics and anesthetics, things that we around this council table take for granted for ourselves and our loved ones, were unavailable, blocked and denied. And we say the words humanitarian crisis, but this is what it means, the pain and the screams of a toddler who cannot get the basic health care that they need. And only 18 out of 36 hospitals in Gaza now remain open, all of them struggling to operate amid severe shortages of fuel, medicine, equipment and staff. Over 1,700 healthcare workers have been killed in Gaza, more than 300 detained. This is what the catastrophic collapse of Gaza's healthcare system looks like. And as we are gathered here, Israeli forces are escalating the conflict in Gaza City, pounding more homes into rubble, sending frightened families scattering. It is incomprehensible, it is inhumane, it is utterly unjustifiable, and it must end. All that this action from the Israeli government will do is make a catastrophic humanitarian situation worse. More healthcare in crisis, harder than ever to get desperately needed aid to those who need it, more innocent children enduring a man-made famine, more civilians killed, but making it harder to get the remaining hostages out. Hostages who are still being held, who were seized by Hamas on the barbaric terrorist attack of October the 7th, and are still being held in the most horrendous conditions, prolonging the anguish for their families. And I reiterate our condemnation of Hamas and that barbaric terrorism in October the 7th. I met with some of the UK-linked hostage families again last week. Their ask of all of us is to keep the hostages at the forefront of our minds, to do everything we can to give their loved ones the chance of coming home and to achieve a ceasefire that gives them the chance to do that. And that must be our task. We know what needs to be done. We need a ceasefire now. We need the release of all the hostages. We need the immediate restoration of aid and support for medical care. And we need a broader framework for the lasting peace. And I welcome and support mediation efforts being made by the United States, Qatar and Egypt to seek an end to conflict and to seek peace. We know too that Gaza cannot be seen in isolation from the West Bank. The Israeli government is tightening its stranglehold on the Palestinian economy and continuing to approve illegal settlement construction, including just recently in the E1 area of East Jerusalem, which is a further blow to the viability of a two-state solution. And we urge Israel to reverse these plans. After 2 years of bloodshed, I believe the world is united in wanting this awful war to end, united in wanting all the hostages released, united in rejection of any role for Hamas in the future of Gaza or the future of a Palestinian state, united in wanting Israel to unblock aid and end the humanitarian catastrophe. and united in wanting a better and more peaceful future for the region, with the reconstruction of Gaza, the dignity for its people, and a new era of relations to support their collective security. And that future must be based on a two-state solution. The UK's historic recognition of the state of Palestine this week is part of our commitment to peace, part of acting to protect the viability of the two-state solution as the only path to a just and lasting peace and to security for Palestinians and Israelis alike, part of rejecting extremist ideas on all sides, which involve too often fantasies of the destruction of the state of Israel or expulsion of the Palestinian population. We reject both of those, and part of our wider effort to work with partners on a long-term peace, not just to halt the immediate crisis, but an advance and a pragmatic plan for what comes next. None of this can happen without an immediate ceasefire, and that is where all of this has to start. One of the doctors yesterday described the impact on children of growing up in trauma and devastation. And those will be the consequences on generations to come if we do not act now. We owe it to all of those children growing up in Gaza, across Palestine, across Israel. We owe it to all of them to build a better future. The time for peace is now. Thank you.
I thank Her Excellency Ms. Cooper for the statement. I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Georgios Gerapatritis, Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Hellenic Republic.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to thank you personally for convening this important meeting today at a very critical moment for the Middle East. Distinguished colleagues, what we have been witnessing in the Gaza Strip, words fail to describe. The humanitarian catastrophe is ongoing. For almost 2 years, the civilian population has endured conditions that are unsustainable and deeply concerning. No one should be compelled to live under such circumstances. The expansion of military operations in the city of Gaza has led to further displacement and risks, worsening an already dire humanitarian crisis. This reality endangers civilian lives. Any further escalation in Gaza, which worsens the already dramatic situation for civilians, must be avoided. The plight of children underscores the urgent need to guarantee safe, unhindered and sustained humanitarian access at scale to all parts of Gaza in full respect of international law and international humanitarian law. Mr. President, Greece is actively engaged in all efforts to alleviate the suffering of the people in Gaza. We have consistently provided humanitarian assistance. We have already welcomed injured children from Gaza for treatment in Greek hospitals. On another strand of effort, we voted in favor of every draft resolution that would address the crisis in Gaza, the latest demanding the lifting of all restrictions on humanitarian aid. And this past May, I stood alongside the representatives of 80 UN members here in New York, reaffirming the significance of protecting civilians in armed conflicts. Humanitarian access is crucial to alleviating the suffering of the Palestinian population. Safe access to food, water, shelter, clothing, and medicines throughout the territory must be guaranteed, and international humanitarian law must be respected. Initiatives to expand deliveries in Gaza by land, air, or sea must be further strengthened. At the same time, hostages continue to suffer horribly at the hands of Hamas. We were appalled by the images and videos released last month showing 2 hostages visibly emaciated as they described the appalling conditions of their captivity. We reiterate our call for unconditional release of all remaining hostages. Mr. President, we recall that this Council has rightly addressed the recent strikes in Doha earlier this month, which are even more concerning given Qatar's crucial role in hosting and mediating negotiations for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas alongside the United States and Egypt. We continue to believe that diplomacy remains the most effective tool even in the most difficult circumstances. Greece has unwaveringly supported the negotiation efforts and will continue to do so. And we urge all parties to rise up to the gravity of the situation, return to the negotiating table as soon as possible, and be guided by international law. Mr. President, recent settlement expansion in the West Bank and settler violence further impair the prospects for peace. We express our profound concern over announcements on the construction of additional settlements in the E1 area of West Bank. Such plans, were they to be realized, would further undermine the prospects of a two-state solution. The escalation of settler violence, including against Christian communities, is a cause for grave alarm as well. It needs to stop now.